The problem is what values we have in society, right? We pursue other things than children. We pursue careers and hobbies.
I just get this feeling that every time we try to play God, we fall flat on our faces.
The future belongs to those who show up for it. The fate of everything is up to who sticks around to steer things.
Hi guys, welcome to God Literally. I'm your host, Susana Skies, and I'm really excited today because today is the first conversation I'm going to have with a guest regarding certain parts of the Bible. Today we're going to cover creation and explore Genesis 1. If you haven't actually read Genesis 1, I've done Bible readings that I have on my channel, and I will link the relevant Bible reading in the description below for this episode. Today, I'm lucky to have my husband joining us. That's my husband, Arvid, there. Hi, Arvid. Thank you for joining today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, let's start then with Genesis 1. So he begins with the heaven and the earth was created and things seem to be dark and void. And then the first thing that actually happens is God speaks, and his first words were, "Let there be light." It could have been anything else. It could have been, "Let there be a sun, let there be a lamp, let there be electricity." But his first words were, "Let there be light." To me, personally, that I don't know why it struck such a strong chord to me, because to me, lightness symbolizes all good things like safety, clarity. Yeah, it gives me a sense of comfort as opposed to the darkness. And even we have so many sayings regarding light. The light at the end of a tunnel, it's always darkest before the dawn, meaning something good is about to come. And it just, to me, has a lot of significance that he chose to start with light. And it's also interesting to me that the source of that light is not specified. It just comes at his will with his words, and there it is. What do you think about his first words being, "Let there be light"?
Well, I would say that before God speaks, there is nothing. Like, everything is uniform, one. And if everything is one, there is nothing there to discern. Like, you can't even speak about there anything existing. For something to exist, it must be discernible, perceivable. Like, so the first thing he does is actually speak. That means before that there was silence. So now there is silence. There's like the pre-creation step. Then he speaks. That's the first division of discernment. And then what he speaks is the second division of discernment, which is he speaks light into being. And I think he's talking about the concept of light. And the concept of light is only meaningful when paired with darkness, right? Light and darkness are kind of two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. If everything was light, you wouldn't be able to discern anything. If everything was darkness, you wouldn't be able to discern anything. They give each other meaning.
Basically, what you're saying then is that to you, the light comes just for discernment purposes?
Well, existence is predicated on discernment, I would say. Like, nothing can exist. There is no existence without division into complementary opposites. And this you see throughout all of creation, like a line or a seam going through it, which is...
Yes, earth, seas, night, day.
And I would say ultimately creator and creation. But even at a higher level of abstraction, you could say cause and effect.
What I also found interesting was the fact that, also talking about light and darkness, that he never leaves us completely in the dark. Even though he doesn't get rid of the darkness, he allows the darkness to continue, but he never leaves us completely in darkness, because later on in creation, like on the third or fourth day, I can't remember exactly, but he also creates the stars, the moon. He creates them so that they can be signs for us of time going by and seasons, I guess. But the point being that he never leaves us in complete darkness. And that also kind of, I see it tie back to what I was saying to begin with, that we can always find a shining light, even at the darkest times. Do you think that means anything?
Well, I don't think we could exist in complete darkness, so there isn't much choice here. Um, it's a cycle, right, of dark and light. If we were always in the dark, we would die of, uh, well, nothing could grow, and it would be cold, right? But if we were always in the light, we would probably also die from drought and so forth and heat. So it's, I would say that they are both needed, and that life is downstream from darkness and light.
Sure, sure. But when it's dark, when it's nighttime, we still have light. We're never completely in the dark. That's what I'm trying to say. He doesn't quite specify the same thing in the reverse, you know what I mean? Even though there is still darkness and light, there still are shadows, and there still are, I don't know, hidden intentions.
I suppose this serves some function as well. Not all animals sleep at night. Some hunt, some are hunted, and that nightly light is probably necessary to see at least a little bit, to be able to discern something.
Sure. Yeah. You don't read into these things with more than just what is written.
It depends, but I think you need to be careful with reading more into it.
Yes. Yeah, that is true, because then there would be there's his word, and then there's billions of
I
interpretations of
think you
it.
need to look at it with a fresh set of eyes and look at it without so many preconceptions. If you read too much into it beyond what is written, I think it is impossible to read a lot into something beyond what is actually written without putting your own biases and preconceptions into it. So that's why you need to be careful.
All right. Then there's the creation process. I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it was quite marvelous. He went from pretty much nothing to everything in just 6 days with just his word, and boom, there it is. Whatever it is, it's light, boom, light. If it's animals, it's animals. With a few words, it's like bam, there it is. He's so powerful. And not only is it there, whatever he creates, he assesses it and decides it's good, so he makes sure it's good. And in saying that, how good is it? It's amazing. The world is amazing. He went from nothing to everything in 6 days to this beautiful, self sustainable world, and that has incredible beauty that we cannot create as humans, even if we try to. Like, we can't compete. It's just a sunset, the ocean, the sounds of the birds in the sky. I mean, all those things, the sound of the wind, the rustle of it in your hair. What a marvelous creation, right?
I suppose if it wasn't marvelous, it wouldn't really be creation, and if it wasn't sustainable, it wouldn't really be creation. I mean, it's, I guess it creation is really what, it's life, right? It's what it takes for there to be life. I don't think anything could exist without life. I don't, it all comes together. I don't think you can even have matter without life. I think everything falls apart without life. Life is the force that holds it together. So it's yeah, and it would all be pointless without. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that it actually could be there without any living thing. Would kind of be pointless to have matter. There's nobody there to perceive it or do anything with it. It's just a tool, really, for creation. It's nothing in and of itself. It's a, what do you call it, a pre-creation substance. But It's life.
What are we talking about? Sorry?
I'm talking about creation and the marvel that it is. I think if you
Yeah.
remove the life component from it, there is no marvel anymore. You see, it's kind of the foundational thing.
Yeah, no one would
No, but
appreciate
I
it,
don't think it would
obviously,
even
except
work.
himself. But I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying how wonderful it is. And I think you're wrong. Creation can be a flop. I mean, I've created things that haven't worked, but his
But
creation is marvelous.
things that just fall apart are is not something that anybody gets to experience, is it? Except when it falls
Oh,
apart. But
yeah.
let's say that you create something that is part of your creation. Like, let's say you create something, and there's something inside of that creation that
Hmm.
actually can perceive the creation. If that creation falls apart,
Hmm.
then that which can perceive the creation also falls apart, like from within.
Yeah, if the world falls apart, we fall apart.
Well, I guess it goes both ways.
Right. No, I don't think it does.
If life falls apart, the world falls apart, I would say.
Yeah, but not us humans. If we fall apart, the world will still continue.
Yeah,
If that's what
if we
God
don't
wants, of course.
destroy too much of it in the process.
Yeah. I mean, it could change, but I think it is a little bit pretentious to think that we could destroy God's creation, I think,
Yeah,
which is why I have a bit of a problem with all this
I mean, it depends on how you.
earth global warming stuff.
Well, it
Um,
depends on how you look at
that,
it. I mean, if humans are part of the creation, you can certainly destroy yourself, and in that respect, you destroy the creation. Um, and also, it's a lot easier to destroy than to create. Creating something is like there's a labor of love. It can take a long time, but destroying something is quickly done. Let's take a thing like a tree. It takes like up to 10 years from the moment you plant it until it's a bare fruit, right? But it takes, I don't know, 10 seconds to kill it.
okay, so we know that he created the world in 6 days and then rested on the seventh. He creates things perfectly immediately, and he does things in an order that is necessary for the next step to be able to happen. So he does things in a very systematic way and logical way. What do you think about that?
Well, I think if it wasn't done in this particular way, it wouldn't work out. There probably is no other way of doing it than the way it's been done. Things need to, the pieces need to fall into place in a certain order. Like he's establishing boundaries, and life exists within these boundaries. So the boundary is kind of a necessary step. Uh, like it's an element of containment within which the creation exists, um, and you need to have the containment in place before you can contain something, or the container in place before you can contain.
I do think it is interesting how he does stop and see whether what he's done is good. He doesn't automatically assume it, and he could, in theory, right? He's God. It's interesting that even he has to do quality assurance. Isn't that almost a human thing?
Well, humans are created in God's likeness,
Yeah.
so it's more like the human ability to judge is something inherited, or a gift from God.
Yeah.
But I think what's most interesting about the judgment that is in every step of the way is that in order for there to be judgment, there must be a value scale.
Yes.
There must be good and bad, right?
Yep.
Or evil. Like, it must be something that's desirable and something that isn't desirable. So this is an innate property of God, that he has this value scale, this meter, like from, he has a target and he has what it means to fall short of the target. Well,
Yes, he has certain standards that need to be met. And I guess in his eyes, he met them along the way, even with the creation of us humans. It's funny how, us being so imperfect, he still thought that we met his standards. And I guess that made me think a lot, because I'm like, why would we meet his standards? I mean, we are anything but perfect. We're far from it. But I guess the reason might be that he created us exactly as he wanted us to be, and he wanted us to be free to screw up and fall from grace. He knew that there was that possibility, and he wanted us to have it. So obviously that's meaningful as well, because we didn't fall short from his standards. We were exactly how he wanted us to be, even in with all our faults. What do you think about
right.
that?
Well, if you can't go wrong, you can't go right. So this goes back to that value scale, right? And if he created us in his image, um, and he has this ability to discern, and we have this ability to discern, I mean, we have to be able to go wrong. If we can't go wrong, we can't go right, and that means we don't have a free will. If all you can do is do the right thing, that's not really like doing anything at all, because then you're not making any choices. It has no,
Yeah, it's more
it
like a
has
robot.
no
Yeah.
moral component. There's no consciousness in it. There's no life in it. It's just like a piece of dead wood floating downstream.
Yeah. I guess he wanted us to choose to do the right thing. And I guess in a way he totally gave us the tools to do that with. Like, he gave us a conscious, we know when we're doing something right and when we're doing something wrong. At least most of the time we know. He definitely gave us some sort of compass, I guess, to figure that out, an internal one. And the fact that we could go in the opposite direction of what's right gives our actions, yeah, like you were saying, meaning. That makes it meaningful to him when we choose to do the right thing instead of just doing it because that's all we can do.
Right.
One thing that really caught my attention, and I wanted to see if you had noticed, with all the living things that he creates, he blesses them. And he blessed the fish, the birds, he blessed humans, but he didn't bless the animals of the land. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I haven't really thought much about that. I would have to meditate on it. It's maybe it needs to be looked upon in the, like, from the entire, when you read the Bible, just keep it in mind, I suppose, and see if it has any implications.
Yeah, it was a very interesting observation, and I do think it has meaning. And I think, like you say, we will discover it, or maybe try to understand it a bit more throughout the Bible. I hope so. I also noticed that in creation, he offers us like fruit and vegetables to eat. He doesn't offer us animals to eat. What do you think about that?
Well, he said, he blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on earth. And God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed, so you it shall be for food. Yes, it is true that he doesn't explicitly say that we're supposed to eat animals, but maybe it's just implied because it's such a...
No, I don't think it is, actually. I don't think it is implied. And just like you said to me, don't read more into things. I don't think you should either. because this is what it says. As a meat eater and a meat lover, it made me uncomfortable, not gonna lie. And then another thing that you actually read there, that he gives us, so he gives us the world, he gives us the animals, and the only thing he asks of us is to be fruitful and multiply. And maybe that's not an only, maybe the word to describe it isn't only, because being fruitful is not always so easy, but to multiply should be easy. And we're struggling as the humankind is struggling with that, isn't it? It seems to be that we're trying to take matters in our own hands, and we're defying God in that way, I suppose. What do you think?
Well, to be fruitful and multiply, in order for anything to exist, like um, long term, sustainably, as you said about creation, you need to be fruitful and multiply. Like if you aren't fruitful and multiply, you will sooner or later disappear, right? Be no more. So there's not really any choice in the matter. Either you do it or there is no you.
Yeah, but we're failing as a species, aren't we?
Well, if you look at us like a species, then perhaps. But I think it's not about quantity, it's about quality. Something that I really have taken to heart from the Bible is you only need 12. And also well, further on in the Bible, you will see that there is huge amount of people descending from just a single ancestral figure, like a man and a woman. Well, you have Adam and Eve, but you have other examples of this later in the Bible. So I don't think everybody needs to be fruitful and multiply, but somebody has to.
Well, I know a lot of great people who are not multiplying, and it's kind of sad.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that's also a choice you have to make, right? Either you do or you don't. You can't force someone to do it. And I don't think it's right to force someone.
No, but I know people who want to do it. Yeah, I know people who want to do it and have not been so lucky, and it's kind of sad that we've come to this in this day and age that happens. It's not uncommon for that to happen, for
Yes.
people who would make perfect parents. Well, maybe nobody's perfect, but really good parents.
But the problem is, in this case, is what values we have in society, right? We pursue other things than children. We pursue careers, and hobbies, and so that's also a choice, right? But of course, it also matters what you are taught by your teachers in life and what the values are in society. But yeah, let's look at it like this. The biologically optimum age for women to have children is around 19 years of age. And this is not something that's really fostered in the mindset of modern people. Like it's almost like people are blissfully unaware of it. And it's a short, limited time window, and it's not really being taken advantage of. On top of that, we have abortions, which is, it also reduces fertility, right? And we have more problems, like we have welfare states. So, and that costs a lot of money. So then people need to work and pay taxes for it, and it just doesn't leave a lot of money to raise a family. And then your children are taken away from you to be raised by strangers in the welfare state system. So there is a lot of things that are detrimental to the family unit in modern society.
Absolutely. Even the way people seem to think of children these days, they see it as a burden, that children are a burden, and that they will lose their life because of having children. And I just think that that way of looking at it is so wrong, because I'm a mum, and I can tell you that as a woman, at least for me, there is nothing that I could have, there's nothing better that I could have done. And the most meaningful thing in my life is the fact that I have my daughter, a husband, and my dog. And if I lacked these things, if I didn't have these things, I probably would be really lost and sad and
Mm.
lonely. And I think I was those things until I had them.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it gives your life more meaning, and it also helps you grow up, right? Reach the full template, because if you don't have children, chances are you're gonna stay a child yourself and never do the full journey. And yeah, it's kind of a shame, um, because what's the point of being a child your whole life? It's when it get old. And was something else I was gonna say about this. I think it's such a backwards thinking. Also, let's say that you actually care about the creation, you care about the future, care about mankind, and you choose not to have children for that very reason. It is extremely backwards thinking, because if you cared about it, I mean, then you would want to create more people that care about it. Uh, and if you care about it, you should have hope. And to have children is also to have hope. I mean, you have hope in the future.
Yeah.
So there's no point in life if you don't have hope. And if you don't want to make things better, there's also kind of no point. That's kind of the driving force to make things better. And not having children isn't making things better, because all you do is leave space for other people who care less. The future belongs to those who show up for it. The fate of everything is up to who sticks around to steer things.
This is true. Another thing, like that you said, which is totally true, is that we're kind of postponing parenthood to allow for a progression in career or studies or so on. Parenthood is not at the top of the list. And I mean, men can definitely get away with it, but women can't. And as a woman who would have loved to have had more children, I just wish someone would have told me, be fruitful and multiply. You can't just put things on hold because you just don't know how long you have. And it just feels that we humans think that we have the freedom to decide when our bodies will do things, and we are so wrong about that. We do not have that freedom. We need to focus on what needs to be focused on in the right order, just like God did in the creation. You can always study with a kid, which is what I ended up doing anyway, and you can always do other things later. Whereas you don't know that you can do motherhood later. So I just think that that is something that needs to be amplified. This needs to be amplified. I think feminism in that way has done women a big injustice. I just want to speak to fellow ladies out there and maybe explain that how heartbreaking it is when you can't get what you want. It's not only postponing parenthood, it's also decisions that you make along the way. You need to be discerning, like God was in this process of creation. If you want a perfect creation of your own, you need to be discerning, and that includes like what you decide to do first, who you decide to date, all those things. It's so important. It's not Sex in the City. Real life is not Sex in the City. Real life is just flies. Time flies and opportunities disappear as time goes by. So it's just something that I've just been thinking about a lot, and just wanted to say
But
that.
it's kind of an important property of creation, I would say, that there is a deadline. If there was no deadline, nothing would get done either, and everything would just grind to a halt. So, and what else? Yeah, well, this with having children, it ties into creation as well. I mean, as human beings, having children is a child is the greatest the greatest thing we can create as human beings. That's the only thing that's on par with what God can do. Everything
Yeah.
else is just dead.
But we can't create whenever we want with a what do you call
Snap of the
this?
finger, or
A snap of the fingers. Thank you. We can't do it, so we shouldn't think that we can, and we should remember that. And also, yeah, I could go down another rabbit hole, which we probably don't have time for, but all this thing with IVF and all these things that kind of buy us time. Even you can't even count on that, and it's almost humans playing God. And I just get this feeling that every time we try to play God, we fall flat on our faces. Maybe not every time, but I think intervening in processes like these, thinking that we can, uh, is a little
deluded.
deluded,
Well,
pretentious, and gives people.
humans are
Pardon?
extremely deluded. We don't know our
Yeah,
place.
and it just gives us. Yes, and it also gives people false hope, because then you think, oh well, I can always just go for IVF, or I can freeze my eggs, or whatever. I mean, those are options that I'm not necessarily against, but don't count on them is basically what I'm trying to say, and you might end up falling flat on your face. Um okay, I think we're kind of running out of time, but I think we've covered a lot. What I also wanted to cover a bit of is just going into reading the Bible. One of the things that I was hoping for was to get to know God. And so from reading creation, I have been able to kind of, because the Bible doesn't say God this, God that, God this is this and this and this. I'm trying to glean from the Bible all those things, his personality traits and who he is. So kind of need to decipher who God is through what he does, which is probably should be true for everything, right? You judge things not by what they say, but what they do. And from reading creation, what I kind of figured was that, well, he's very powerful. He's extremely organized and systematic. He's judgmental. I don't mean that in a bad way, but he does judge things. He's a risk taker because he gives all his creation to humankind. Generous because he gave us all these things. What do you think? Am I
Well, I
missing
think
something?
that creation has to be a gift. If it comes with strings attached, then it's more like a transaction or something. It's not a labor of love. It's doing it to get something in return. There's no, it needs to be for free. Needs to be a gift. Needs to be a labor of love. Otherwise, it's not true creation. Otherwise, it's something else. Otherwise, it's just like you create a product for a market or something, and it's not. That's not what God is. God is not a merchant. God is not a contractor. He's he's a giver of gifts.
And I guess he's generous to those with those he loves, right? He must love us to give us these gifts. You don't give things to people you don't love.
And love requires discernment. Love without discernment is pointless. That's nothing.
And then the other thing that caught my attention was, what is God, and what's his composition in a way, because he talks of himself as singular and as plural, because when he creates mankind, he says, create mankind in our likeness. It's plural. He's singular sometimes as well. Then there's also God's spirit hovering over the waters at the beginning. So there's God and then there's God's spirit. I found that interesting as well, and left me with a few question marks. What do you think about that?
Well, I guess the spirit of God. I mean, if you look at how that word is used, like spirit is the meaning, the essence of something. So you have the essence of God, like the concept of God, I guess, the spirit, and then you have God in an actual uh, corporeal form, acting as a cause. Like I think there are different layers of abstraction. Uh, at the highest level, there is no action really. There is just potentiality, and then God as somebody that actually is a force in this world that does something is further down the scale. So, and I think God can only descend; he cannot ascend, because if you are the highest thing there is no further. There's no way further to go. You can only go down. And I think that also has something to do with Jesus later coming down on earth. It's the only way it goes. Divinity can descend, but that which is divine cannot ascend. Because that which is divine, it's
Because
already
it's already up
ascended.
there. Well, I don't know. Is there anything else you would like to say about creation? We have very few minutes left.
It's just that what I find is the red line is that this division going on from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
It's there is this pre-creational state of nothingness, and there is of silence and void, and then there is the voice, the command, then there is light, darkness, there is heaven and earth, there's
Yeah, there's always
dry
division
land and
along the
sea,
way,
there's male and female,
which we forget these days.
and these are, I think these are all necessary components, like, of creation. Things are divided into complementaries that give each other meaning and are meaningless on their own. There's no point in having females without males. There's no point in having males without females. There's no point in having earth without heaven, and vice versa. And it's also very interesting, I think, that he makes a boundary between the waters above and the waters below, a firmament, which he then later calls heaven. And I think this is a boundary between what's contained on Earth and or like the atmosphere, and then what's outside. If you look at the waves and the waters, like the waters is like the medium through which waves propagate. They can be any kind of waves, right? Sound, light, and so forth, heat. And if you look at the firmament, heaven, then as a boundary, it certainly does serve the purpose of dividing the waves outside from the waves inside. It only lets certain things through. And I don't think you can have
Yeah.
creation without boundaries. I think these are all boundaries drawn.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have kingdom without boundaries. Even the cell, the smallest living unit we know, has boundaries.
You can't exist without boundaries. Another thing we seem to forget these days. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today in this discussion. It's been incredibly interesting, and I know we're going to feel like we didn't touch upon things that we wanted to touch upon, but time flies, like we were saying before, and I guess we can always revisit this another time. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today. I really appreciate it, and I hope my viewers did too.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode.